warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Semangat pagi, sahabat Indosat Uridu dan Satria. Salam sehat dan salam sejahtera. Selamat datang di People Fest Indosat Uridu 2021. Journey towards the new chapter. Saya Lisa Konita, jangan bosan-bosan ya ngelihat saya udah 2 minggu ini lu lagi ya. Mudah-mudahan sahabat dan Satria nggak bosan lihat saya. Karena saya sekarang nih antusias sekali untuk memandu webinar atau sharing kita kali ini. Jangan lupa ya, ada fitur live chat yang dapat dipakai untuk saling sapa, berkomentar, dan menyampaikan pertanyaan. Boleh dong dicoba dulu untuk teman-teman yang udah hadir agar bisa absen di kolom komentar nih. Nah, sepertinya saya lihat udah banyak ya yang nunggu untuk webinar dimulai nih. Oke. Sahabat dan Satria, the topic of our discussion today is being an impactful agile leaders to secure new business horizon, where we will explore more deeply about future business insight in Indonesia and globally. Become an agile leader in the digital disruptive era, challenge to become an agile leader, and strategies of business leaders to encounter the digital economy in Indonesia. Nah, webinar ini nih sebenarnya sekaligus menjadi kick off dari program Leadership Development Program kita, iLead, untuk para SVP. Jadi para SVP yang kita mau persiapkan to move up to the next leader, di sini akan belajar banyak dari Pak Randy juga, sama seperti sahabat dan Satria semua di sini. Rasanya kita udah nggak sabar ya mendengarkan penjelasan dari speaker kita kali ini. Selain topik webinar yang seru banget, kami ingin beritahu teman-teman nih sekalian bahwa akan ada hadiah menarik bagi teman-teman yang mengajukan pertanyaan terbaik. Sama ya seperti webinar-webinar sebelumnya. Dan juga untuk mereka yang dapat menjawab pertanyaan dari pembicara nanti kalau ada ya. Nah, apabila nanti narasumber kita memberi pertanyaan, maka akan dipilih sahabat dan Satria yang dapat menjawab di kolom komen dengan jawaban yang paling benar dan tercepat. Yang terakhir, jika teman-teman join webinar ini sampai akhir, nanti ya ingat ya harus sampai akhir ya, akan dapat 2 stamps yang dapat teman-teman kumpulkan agar bisa mendapatkan tiket nonton F1 Uridu Qatar Grand Prix langsung di Qatar. Pengen kan? Makanya dari kemarin pada rebut-rebutan stamp kan? Yuk makanya nonton semua webinarnya sampai akhir ya. Dan jangan malu-malu loh untuk mengajukan pertanyaan atau menjawab di kolom chat selama webinar berlangsung. Nah sebelum kita mulai, I would like to invite Pak Vikram dulu ya, Pak Vikram Sinha, our Director and Chief Operating Officer. Pak Vikram, we know that he's very committed to the development of leaders and always encourages us to always learn from the experts. Over to you, Pak.
Good morning, everyone. Semangat pagi. I will like to greet our people manager all across Indosat. This is a special webinar session designed for you, our leaders. Also on this occasion, I will like to welcome our Senior Vice President who will join this Leadership Development Program in the next 3 weeks. As you may have known that this is our way to have a tremendous leap forward in our strategy. We also continuously show our commitment to our customers the best experience possible. In the first half of 2021, where we have recorded a strong set of results. We also want to show our commitment in developing our employees, especially our leaders, the people who are here today. It is you who will take this organization to the next level. And please keep this in mind. What has brought us here will not take us to the next level. That is why we invite you in this session, because the management really count on you to be an agile leader, and while doing that, develop yourself and take our business to the new horizon. In this session, we invited Pak Randy Jusuf. He is the Managing Director of Google Indonesia. There cannot be a better example than Google and the leadership of Pak Randy. You can get a lot of insight and learning how Mas Randy and his team has worked on, especially during challenging time, on taking a quantum jump and I'm sure he will talk about the importance of digital economy, the importance of Indonesia become a digital powerhouse. I hope all of you can enjoy this session. Take this opportunity as an advantage. Ask Mas Randy the gain and new heights and take away from him. Our senior vice president, the leadership team, who will join this iLead program. This session is the first step before you join the immersive program, and hopefully it can enhance your leadership skills even better in the future. I will also like to thank Mas Randy for his enthusiasm on sharing with us on this special session. Semangat pagi!
Thank you Pak Vikram for sharing with us and for greeting us. Nah, dijamin teman-teman udah pada penasaran kan? Yuk kita secara resmi berkenalan dengan pembicara kita yang spektakuler, Bapak Randy Jusuf, Managing Director from Google Indonesia, yang dulunya juga bekerja di various large companies as a leader such as Kimberly-Clark, Textron, dan McKinsey. Oleh karena itu, tanpa menunggu lebih lama lagi, yuk kita sambut bareng-bareng. Pak Randy Jusuf, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Lisa, and of course, Pak Vikram for such a heartwarming and welcoming and enthusiastic opening. I really appreciate this opportunity. So I just want to also, before I start, have a greetings to the whole Indosat team, and of course to Pak Ahmad as the President, Director, and CEO, and Pak Vikram, as I mentioned, as the Director and CEO, and Pak Irsyad Saroni as the Director and CHRO of Indosat, as well as the whole amazing leadership, senior leaders that are attending this call. I feel extremely privileged, saya merasa sangat terhormat sekali to have this opportunity just to share a little bit of what we are doing at Google and a little bit about myself. So I think without further ado, if I may, I would like to start it first with a short video about Google. Ibu Feby from Google will help me also navigate the presentation. Let's play the first video, Feby.
When we were trying to name Google, we actually went through thousands of names.
The name of the company has now become its own verb in the dictionary.
Let's Google it.
You can Google it.
Work the Google on the internet machine.
6 simple letters on a plain white page.
Being able to do searches in any language about any country.
When you're putting in a question, they'd finish your question for you.
We have been working on organizing the world's information.
Our goal is to digitize all the books.
Today, Google announced Gmail. Email for everyone for free.
Google is mapping the entire world to make it more accessible to people everywhere.
Google is jumping into the mobile market.
Android was built as an open platform for everyone to use and build on.
This is Chrome. It's a faster, safer browser for the open web.
Google is unveiling what they call the knowledge graph.
We needed to understand the world the way you and I do, as objects and relationships between objects.
Today, Google got another useful feature with Google Now.
We are providing you with answers before you've even asked for them.
One of my favorite cards is the one that shows traffic data for your commute to and from work.
Think about how far Google has evolved from the 10 blue links.
We asked ourselves, how can we assist you right when you need it?
Okay, Google, call the Walker Arts Center.
It's not just desktops, phones, and laptops anymore.
Okay, Google. 유진이한테 5분 늦는다고 문자 보내줘.
It's watches with displays, car consoles with displays.
Okay, Google. Let's go to the aquarium.
How can we help you get things done in as few steps as possible?
Okay, Google.
Okay, Google. Okay, Google. Show me my photos of Lucas with a pumpkin.
But we have to remember, we have a long way to go.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, so let me start with, thank you for all of you who watched that video. Let me start with what we always start with at any Google presentation, is to share what is the mission of Google and the mission why we innovate as a company. I'm sure a lot of you have read this, but I'll repeat it again. Our basic mission is to organize all the information in the world and make it universally accessible and useful. And that becomes the true north, pedoman, for us as a company as we come up with products, as we come up with innovative solutions and whatnot. Next slide, I'll share at the high level. Google is part of the major company called Alphabet, or Naungan company, if I may say. And obviously, Google is the biggest one with all the products that all of you are familiar with, including YouTube, Android, and whatnot. But Alphabet as a company also has a lot of other division alongside, as you can see on the left side, whether it's the self-driving Waymo car, the innovation lab that we have at Google X, as well as some of a lot of other things. So we are not just Google, but Google is definitely a key part of Alphabet. Next slide, please. So again, for the privilege of today's session, I was asked to talk a little bit about digitalization in Indonesia, as well as a fair bit about myself, which I'm not used to, and thoughts about how to be an agile leaders in the digital economy. So I'll attempt to do that by starting first with providing some outlook, and then a couple of examples from and then a little bit about myself. Yeah. There's a background noise a little bit, but okay, cool. Okay, let me start with sharing with, I'm sure everybody in Indosat company already know as well, Indosat Ooredoo. Indonesia is rapidly digitizing. The amount of people who are on the internet is already 196 million people. Most of them are on mobile, and they spend a lot of time on mobile. Next slide. So this is, again, this report has been out for a couple of months right now, since late last year. So I don't think the news is that new anymore. What I will share though, we will introduce a new report, the updated version of the Google Bain Temasek report in the next couple of weeks, and we'll surely share it with the Indosat team as well. But what I will say is that the momentum continue to accelerate and grow with regards to digitization of internet economy. And just a reminder for folks who have not read this report, our definition of digital economy over here, it includes digital media, as well as online travel, as well as digital e-commerce, of course, e-commerce and ride-hailing, and some other, basically some other digital spending. So this is primarily focusing on the spending that happens in the digital economy. And as you can see, Indonesia certainly is the largest among the other Southeast Asian countries, and it's also continuing to grow double-digit, even last year, despite COVID, and we continue to expect it to accelerate. So Indonesia is really at the forefront of digital economy, despite the pandemic. Next slide. I'll actually probably have one more video to share. We have this event called Google for Indonesia, which again, I think a number of you probably have watched it as well. Last year was our 5th installment, and we'll have another one coming up in the next couple of weeks for our 6th one. We were very privileged in the most recent Google for Indonesia last year, where we had President Jokowi himself provide us, memberikan pesan-pesan dari beliau, sharing his thoughts with us. And one of the things that he emphasized very strongly is about digitalization of the digital economy, and how Indonesia as a country needs to scale up our digital infrastructure and scale up the digital skilling of Indonesians. As we all know, we have more than 64 million small and medium businesses, and President Jokowi highlighted himself, among the 64 million, only 8 million or 13% are integrated with digital economy. So he expects this to be a key pillar of the development of Indonesia, and he urged and menghimbau untuk kita semua, all of us, to work together, not just with government, but among ourselves, private entity, as well as different stakeholders in Indonesia. I'll just play a very short summary of the speech that President Jokowi shared in this event. If you can play the video, Feby. Thank you.
Saya yakin ekonomi digital akan bisa menciptakan lebih banyak lapangan kerja baru. Sektor UMKM juga masih sangat potensial untuk dikembangkan. Kita perlu lebih banyak lagi software developer, Kita perlu lebih banyak lagi product designer, dan kita juga memerlukan dukungan konten kreator sebanyak-banyaknya. Kita butuh lebih banyak pelatihan-pelatihan untuk mengasah kemampuan SDM IT, sehingga mampu menutupi kebutuhan 9 juta talenta digital nasional hingga tahun 2035. Untuk memenuhi target 9 juta talenta digital nasional tersebut, tidak bisa hanya dikerjakan oleh pemerintah, tapi harus dilakukan bersama-sama, baik oleh pemerintah, perguruan tinggi maupun swasta. Kita juga perlu terus meningkatkan literasi digital untuk menyiapkan masyarakat, terutama generasi muda, agar menggunakan internet dengan baik, aman, bertanggung jawab, bebas dari misinformasi dan desinformasi. Saya berharap berbagai inisiatif seperti Google for Indonesia 2020 akan terus bermunculan untuk berkontribusi bagi pengembangan SDM di bidang IT Indonesia. Saya yakin ekonomi digital.
Ya, sesuai juga dengan bimbingan Presiden Jokowi. I think in line also with the guidance that the President shared with us. We have a program in Google that we call Grow with Indonesia. And if any of you are interested, you can check out that link over there to see more details. Essentially, I've shared about the mission of Google, of which we want to share information and make it helpful. And we believe in order to make it helpful, we have to have a population who are digitally savvy. And that ties in very closely as well with the message that the President shared with us of the gap in terms of the digitalization, the capability of digital. So therefore, we wanted to focus our initiative to help Indonesia digitalize. I won't go through every single one of this pillar, but essentially, as we have been doing it for several years, we realized that you cannot just work on one constituency. We got to help small, medium businesses. We have programs such as Gapura Digital Women Will, of which to date we have trained more than, after several years, 2 million small, medium businesses, including women entrepreneurs. We have programs for students, whether it's the Bangkit initiative that we've been doing with Gojek, Tokopedia, and Traveloka, to provide free lesson on machine learning, Android, as well as Google Cloud Platform on students. We have specific programs for venture capital, startups, and whatnot. And obviously, we are very closely tied with our Google for Education classroom program with the Ministry of Education and the rest of the constituency. And last but certainly not least, as you heard directly from the President himself, he believed that another important kind of element of digitization is about the creator economy. So therefore, we have YouTube as our platform, and we are very committed to continue to help grow the YouTube creator ecosystem in Indonesia, including building creators that are not only fun and entertaining, but also create content that are educational and informative to fight against misinformation. So those are some of the initiatives that we have. I can talk about it for 3-4 hours, but I thought I'd just share an overview. Feel free to check it out on the website if you are interested. Yeah, next slide. So that's just a couple of things specifically on Indonesia. Now, allow me to shift a little bit towards what we see as Google and some of the key things that we see an element of a leader that is important to succeed in digital economy, because that ties in with the topic that Ibu Lisa mentioned. But allow me to talk a little bit about something that what we see going forward for Google. Next slide, please. Yeah, just now, Fikram himself mentioned about the importance to make a quantum leap. So if I may kind of use the word quantum in this case, the picture that you see over there in this slide is what you call cryostat, and I'll explain it later. It sits in one of the Google's. We have a quantum lab in Google in Santa Barbara, California, and this is where the cryostat sits at. And allow me to kind of provide a little bit of context and background. Let me start first with machine learning. I'm sure all of us by now have heard about the word machine learning. Now, Google itself, we have been using machine learning for more than 20 years. If we do spell checking, when you use Google search, whether it's using deep learning revolution that we did 10 years ago about advanced neural nets and whatnot. Machine learning is actually something that you hear a lot nowadays, but as Google, we've actually been using it for a long time. Now, the opportunity and the advantage of using machine learning is that it allows the many incredible applications that we have today. For example, right now the smartphone that all of us use, it actually has more power than the computer that was used when humanity actually flew to the moon many years back. So that just shows the power that we have with machine learning and with chips. However, one of the challenge that we see is, I'm sure a lot of people in this session have heard of this term called Moore's Law. Moore's Law is my first job actually coming out of college in the mid-90s, was to work for a semiconductor company. And in a semiconductor company making memory chips. And one of the law that we follow as a semiconductor company is what you call Moore's Law, which means that the number of transistor in a dense integrated circuit IC will double every 2 years. Because of that, that allows the power of computing to be as amazing as it is today, which is why I mentioned that the smartphone that we all have is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the Apollo 11 computer that was used when we went to the moon in 1996. Now, so that is a huge thing and a huge advancement. However, the challenge is that Moore's Law is slowing down. A lot of us heard, it's at some point it's kind of difficult to make it kind of that small, right? As such, I think in order to ensure the continuation and the advancement of digitalization, we need to find a different way of computing beyond the INO. And that's where quantum computing came into play. Quantum computing, there are many possible applications once we can crack quantum computing. And that is, you can improve battery efficiency by lightening the load of power grid. You can use it to improve drug discovery, coming up with more sustainable energy, targeted medicine, everything. There's a lot of application that AI can use if they have the amazing power of quantum computing that classic computer today currently does not have. The challenge is that quantum computing, with this quantum processor that we have here, inside of it is what you call qubit. Qubit is think of it as like chips, but it's more complicated than that. But it's very fragile. Therefore, you need this thing called cryostat, which has the wiring and aluminum to create a very cold environment. Think of it as a fridge for qubits that allows the qubit to be more stabilized and hence be able to compute error-corrected, useful, commercial-grade quantum computer. Now, Google's objective is within a decade or so, we want to build this useful, error-corrected, hopefully commercial-grade quantum computer in a matter of a decade or so. And with that, that will accelerate and enable a lot of the AI and ML application, which then enable us to solve some of the humanity's challenges today that I mentioned about battery efficiency, drug discovery, as well as sustainable energy. I just want to give that as a bit of a preview because everybody uses Google search, watch video on YouTube and whatnot. I do want folks to understand that as a company, as an innovative company, we are trying to solve the issues that are not only happening for next year or so, but also issues and opportunities that we can crack in the matter of decade and whatnot. So that's one example. Now, then it comes back towards, given this session is about leadership and whatnot, is what enables that? Obviously, we have amazing engineers, capable people, but I, who have worked in Google for 3.5 years right now, give or take, believe that the power that Google has stems from the root cause is from our culture. So with that, allow me to share a couple of we won't have time to cover all of them. I'll share a little bit and then I'll talk a bit about myself because that was one of the things that was asked for. Next slide, please, Fabi. So one of the culture that we have is about focusing on user. We are very obsessed about finding solution for the users. That's how we came up with things like Google Translate, because initially we said, hey, if you're somebody in Japan who might not speak English, our initial version of Google search, it might not be very accurate if you search in Japanese. Therefore, we came up with Google Translate. Now we're coming up with a lot of new technology called, MOMS, Lambda and whatnot, where we also want to service information based on out of image and video, so beyond just search. But first and foremost, our true north is about the user. Next slide, please. Of course, thinking 10x. I spoke quite at length about quantum computing, and that to me is being in Google for many, many years. I'm continuously amazed by the level of thinking and the forward-looking challenges and opportunities that we want to kind of solve as a company. And that I think is ingrained in every single one of us. So when we come up with solutions, if it's something that's incremental, a lot of times we're being pushed and challenged to say, hey, are you thinking short term and just a little bit versus you're actually trying to solve the big problem. So that's something that also ingrained in a lot of Googlers. Next slide. And innovation comes from everywhere. Some of you probably have heard about this 20% project that that employees do. So we have that. It's not as formal. I mean, there are some formality to it, but essentially what it is that we believe that, of course, all of us have our day jobs. Some of us are sales team, some of us are in the engineering team, legal team, and whatnot. But we believe that if you are passionate about something, we want to give you the opportunity. So this is just a process that we have, that we actually allow employees to actually pursue a project that are outside of their core job, as long as they can do their core job right and get the approval of their managers to still be able to do it. Yeah. Okay, so the last slide on this before I move to myself, timing to this topic. So in order to do all this, what constitutes a good manager and a good leader? Coming to the topic about agile leader. So as Google, I think there's a bit of an echo from somebody, if you can mute it. Yeah. As Google, we actually did a study about what makes a good leader and a good manager. And if any of you are interested, at the bottom left there, you can see the link. And what we did is that we did extensive study and analysis in terms of what makes a strong and a good manager. And these are the elements of an amazing leader and a manager. And what, and a lot of them, I think we have a lot of leaders in this call, right? So I don't think a lot of you are super surprised that, of course, a good leaders, set a vision and does not micromanage their team. Of course, a good leader can communicate clearly, build a inclusive team and whatnot. But one thing that I was probably a bit intrigued when I read about this in detail is that technical skill is important. As you can see, we highlight that a bit dark. But even in a company that is so technical and engineering driven like Google, it is only one out of the many levers. So meaning that, you can be like the most technically savvy person, which is nothing wrong with that, that's great. But that is in itself is insufficient. Nggak cukup cuma itu doang. If you don't embody the other element of being a good leader and agile leader. And that is true, frankly, in my experience before working in not Google, as well as now I'm working for Google. So I'm going to use that to kind of transition a little bit about myself. Again, I'm sorry, not because I like to talk about myself, but because I was asked to share a little bit, how do I see all these things in relation to my own experience, and how important it is, what are the key elements that's required that's important for you to be a strong leader in a digital world. So I just want to emphasize it one more time. Doesn't mean that technical skill is not important, but it is just one out of many, many elements, of which a lot of the other elements that you read over here, actually, I think is applicable regardless of what type of industry or company you work for. Next slide, please, Fabi. Okay, I only have 2 more slides, and then we can open it up for questions about myself. Again, I'm personally not always comfortable to talk about myself, but since I'm being asked to share a bit about my experience, I'll try to do my best, and hopefully I can tie in with some questions and any learnings that anybody want to share. So I just want to caveat it with, by no means I'm trying to say I'm the best person. I'm great. I'm not. So I'm still learning a lot as well, but I just want to share a bit about my experience if it can be helpful to the listeners. Next slide, Fabi. Ya, ini sedikit mengenai saya ya, a little bit about myself if I share. So I'm born and raised in Jakarta. The bottom left there is a picture of my school. I went to SMP and SMA, my middle and high school in Canisius, which is Jakarta. But I did go to school in the US, in Wisconsin, and I had an MBA in Wharton. I mentioned a little bit earlier that I worked for a semiconductor company. So my first job was actually in Singapore doing memory chips for a semiconductor for several years as an engineer. But then I went for MBA and I worked as a McKinsey consultant, not only a little bit in Jakarta, but primarily in Atlanta. So that's a picture of Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta, Georgia. I did a lot of consulting work in the US across different industries, telco industry as well, actually telco industry, as well as some basic materials, as well as utilities industry all over US and Europe many years back. And after that, I work in a company called Textron. They actually make the drone, the drone, helicopter, as well as golf car. I was in the golf car division based in Augusta, Georgia, in the southern part of the U.S., leading their product management as well as business development. But the last roles, the last company that I worked for before I joined Google about 3.5 years back was with a company called Kimberly-Clark, where I worked for 8.5 years. And I transitioned from a strategy role in the headquarters in Texas, all the way to, and then I ran strategy for Asia Pacific based in Hong Kong into general manager role. I led the business in Taiwan, and then was responsible for ASEAN and Hong Kong based in Singapore until my last role as to lead the business in Canada, before Google invited me to join as the country manager about 3.5 years back. So that's a little bit about myself, because I was asked to share about my background. Happy to talk a bit more about some of the experience. Next slide. The reason I share a little bit about those is because for me personally, I have had the experience to work with people. I've spent quite a fair bit of time in North America, working in Canada, United States, and actually did quite a lot of projects in Europe as well when I was based in Atlanta. And obviously I've worked all over Asia, not just Indonesia, of course Indonesia, but also the rest of Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and whatnot. But what I realized, and my belief as a leader, I won't go through all of them. Some of them are pretty straightforward. The one that I highlighted is that I find it quite amazing. And of course, we have a lot of leaders here who have worked elsewhere, right? Pak Fikram has worked in many places, Pak Ahmad, and anywhere else. I found that regardless of whether you work in Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, US, or Canada, I think the principle remains the same. It is always people first. Whether you are Indonesian, Singaporean, American, and whatnot. I mean, we have our differences and diversity, which is amazing, but we care about people. We want to grow as a person. We want to help others. We want to make meaningful contribution as an employee. That I find remains true, regardless of where you are, or regardless of which industry you were with. I used to be in the defense industry. I used to be in the semiconductor and in the consumer goods, and now I'm in Google. So I find that remains the same. The other thing that I find is extremely important is with regards to an agile leader, is the willingness and ability to learn. Everything is learnable. So one of the things that I got asked a lot is that, hey, it must be quite challenging to move from a consumer goods industry where you used to, your products are diapers and toilet paper to Google. True, yeah. I spent many hours learning about Google products, our offerings and whatnot. But I found that obviously, just to be clear, I cannot write codes I cannot write computer codes on machine learning and whatnot. But I find that the key principle and the key are learnable. The important thing is that you should have the tenacity, mesti belajar, nggak usah takut, and not be afraid to learn. And I find that once you have that willingness and ability to learn, you can do anything. And last but not least, I would have to say this, digital mindset. I'll give an example. And of course, not just because I'm working for Google. I'll give an example. In my previous company, working for Kimberly-Clark, for example, Kimberly-Clark has a pretty big presence in Korea. For example, Korea. We have a joint venture in Korea. Like 10 years back and whatnot, 90%, a majority of the diapers in Korea are sold through offline. But in a matter of 3-4 years, 70-80% are sold online only. The shift is tremendous. In a matter of 2-3 years, from the distribution channel where it's only offline, meaning you go to the supermarket and buy it, to majority being sold online. And if at that time, the company does not have the mindset of, you have to be able to have our product and make it the right packaging, price point, and whatnot, be available to be sold in online e-commerce. And if you're not willing to have that mindset in a matter of 2-3 years, you can be completely losing out in that, in your own field where you're strong at. So I emphasize that instead of just talking about Google, because I've already spoken 40 minutes about Google, is that the digital mindset is not only relevant for digital companies, it's also relevant for any companies. So I just want to share among some of this, I won't go through the rest of them. Those are the 3 things that I believe is extremely important for me to a person. And I think those I hope are those pedoman and those beliefs also fits in with what an agile leader should be in this era right now. So I kind of stop at that, probably play one more video to kind of share one of the things that we shared in the Google I/O most recently about our new innovation. And after that, we can hand it over back to Ibu Lisa to take some questions. So with that, Fabi, probably you can play the video. Thank you.
Darlene is my younger sister, and the last time I saw her was well over a year ago.
Not being able to see my nephew in person is like, it makes me sad.
So imagine instead of looking at a screen, you're looking at a magic pane of glass. And through that glass, you're seeing another person on the other side.
Hi, can you see me? Say hi to Auntie. Oh my gosh, I love you.
Eddie!
So, you look beautiful.
And then you just start having a conversation, just like you would if you were physically together.
Like, I feel like you're here. This is wild. I can see that curl in your hair. I can see how your sweater is falling.
Yeah. But then you'll be saying, put on a little lipstick, Maury.
There are really 3 breakthroughs coming together here. One is the ability to capture people as they are. The second is the ability to compress that information and send it over existing networks efficiently. And the third is the ability to render that person viewable through a 3-dimensional display. So it really feels like you're talking with someone right in front of you.
We see this as a first step at applying technology to solve that really important problem that we often want to be together and we can't.
Don't say goodbye. Don't go away. That was mind-blowing. I've seen a lot, but I've never seen this.
I felt like she was present, and I felt like I was present in that moment, too. It was like she was here.
Bye.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. That's our Project Starline to hopefully bring the next generation of video conference. So with that, I'll hand it over back to you, Lisa. Terima kasih atas kesempatannya.
Thank you very much, Pak Randi. Menarik sekali ya tadi ya, sahabat dan Satria, inisiatif-inisiatifnya Google dan juga sharingnya Pak Randi tentang his belief as the leader and everything. Udah banyak pertanyaan nih Pak Randi di kolom chat, live chat kita. Pak Randi siap ya menjawab pertanyaan-pertanyaannya Pak ya? Sip. Oke, ini ada satu big question nih Pak Randi. You share about digital economy, digital media, digital commerce dan sebagainya tadi ya Pak ya. Nah, in your opinion, how to become an agile leader in this digital disruptive era Pak? Dan juga what are the challenges that we could have as a leader in becoming agile leader? Pak Randi kan udah banyak experience-nya sebagai leaders nih Pak. Jadi based on your experience and your opinion, what do you think Pak?
Yeah, thank you, Bu Lisa. I would probably repeat back some of the things that I mentioned with regards to I would say the most important thing is mindset. I believe that every era, again, I've been around for a while in terms of, I was born in the 70s. So I've been around, I've gone through different era. Yeah. I believe different eras has their own challenges and opportunities. And right now, the most important thing to me, if I may repeat again, is about the mindset, as I mentioned, about always wanting to learn. What is the difference that I would say, which I think is a huge opportunity nowadays, is that there's so many things that you can learn, so many materials that are available, yang nggak usah bayar, gratis, and then you can access it online. In the old days, if you have even Google search basic, right? During my time when I was in primary school, if I want to find out certain information, you have to buy like Encyclopedia Britannica, which is like not everybody can afford, and it's like so many things. Now you simply Google search it. There's so many trainings that even from, it doesn't have to be from Google. I believe Indosat also has their own amazing training. There's a lot of companies providing free training that are available online that you can actually attend for free and do it for free. The only thing that I would say the challenge is just the mindset. If you have the mindset, not the challenge, the opportunity. If you have the mindset that you want to learn and you're not afraid to learn, you just keep on reading and keep on doing that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pak Randy. That explains all the big questions in our netizens' mind. Now, and also Pak Randy, you said to become a good leader, you need to become a coach also. Now we want to know, have you ever been become a mentor or a coach to another aspiring leader, Pak? Because to become a coach for someone in a lower position than you probably is easier, but have you ever become a mentor or coach for someone that's also a leader, an inspiring leader also? And how did you go about establishing that relationship, Pak?
Yeah, thank you, Bu. I would say on that one, I think in life it's not one way. I probably coach is not necessarily the only word that you can use. We always learn from each other. So for example, the other word you can use, I guess, is networking. So I have fellow leaders or peers that I connect on a regular basis from different industries. For example, people in the venture capital industry, people in I obviously stay in touch with a lot of my senior leaders in the consumer goods industry since I used to work with them, people in the tech industry. So what we do is that we exchange thoughts and learnings. So I think the way to think about it is not just a one-way thing, because there's not one person, I don't believe it, that knows everything. And also, sorry, one more thing that I would add, probably also across region. In fact, this morning, I had a very good session with very senior leaders in the venture capital industry based in Silicon Valley. Obviously, they know about all the amazing things that you read, right, on what the startups community and whatever. But they're very curious in terms of what's happening in Indonesia in the startup community. So I believe that I was able to share what's going on in this part of the world that they found amazing. But obviously, I learned a lot as well in terms of, they share with me what are the next big things that they're seeing in the US, which obviously will go around the world. So those are some of the things. So in terms of the question about how to go about doing it, I would say don't force it. I mean, just work first with the friends and network that you have. As you get to know people and whatnot, I'm sure you have opportunities to exchange those. But I think the key word that I would use is give and take. Yeah, sometimes it's you share something, but you also take something. It's always give and take. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we take it both ways ya Pak ya. So it's not only us giving it to them. Thank you Pak Randy. Nah ini banyak lagi nih udah pertanyaan-pertanyaan netizen nih Pak nih. By the way, our netizen here Pak Randy, not only from Sahabat Indosat Uridu, but also from our friends from Hutchison Tree Indonesia. They call themselves Satria. Ya. Nah, nih salah satu pertanyaannya saya baca ini dalam bahasa Indonesia soalnya Pak. Dari Hodo, bagaimana peran Google di pendidikan dasar di Indonesia dalam upaya meningkatkan mindset terhadap digital thinking sedini mungkin, sehingga pemahaman terhadap digital ada sejak dini? Kayaknya banyak nih Pak ya pengalamannya Google di sini ya Pak ya?
Ya, silakan. Maaf, saya pakai bahasa Inggris apa Indonesia campur-campur ya? Soalnya saya dengar not everybody speaks.
Iya, iya. Kita kayak anak Jaksel aja Pak, bahasanya campur-campur Pak.
Campur-campur aja ya? Ya, mix. Okay. So I use English but I mix it up with Indonesian. Soalnya takutnya orang kirain saya nggak bisa bahasa Indonesia. Masa besar Jakarta nggak bisa bahasa
jagoan ya Pak ya?
Okay.
Ya, campur-campur.
I can speak Indonesian too, but I just want to make sure that it's inclusive to all the audience. So thank you for the question. Yeah, I believe there are many things. So the question is about Google. First of all, even just from the basic standpoint, if you look at the basic infrastructure, as I alluded to earlier, this was especially, I think, very, very prominent in the beginning of the COVID pandemic last year. Google for education, we call it. We have Google Classroom, all this. I think we're using Zoom, but we also have Google Meet. We have all this product that we work and enable students all across Indonesia. So first of all, I think the infrastructure. I think The second thing that I would say with regards to digital mindset, I would talk about it from two standpoints, ada dua hal. First, about just digital skilling, learning, and capability. Second is about how to use internet safely, safer in the internet. Yang pertama dulu ya. The first one is about skilling and whatnot. We have a lot of programs. So for example, one of the things that we did, we have a philanthropic arm called Google.org. Google.org itu bekerja sama dengan organisasi yang namanya Bebras. They work together with an NGO called Bebras to provide computational thinking for students. Maksudnya apa? Because what we found as computational thinking is one of the key foundation for you to be able to kind of advance in terms of logical thinking and whatnot. And that is something that we work together with them to use technology to teach primary students and teaching teachers to that. That's one example of what we do, starting from primary school. On top of a lot of if you Google it, you can find, we have a program called CS First, Computer Science. We have a lot of programs that, as I mentioned earlier, students can actually access it online and learn about those for free. The other part that I feel is equally important, other than the hardware and other than the specific skills to learn digital, is to how to be safe using the internet. Presiden Jokowi sendiri, he already mentioned, right? It is important to fight against misinformation and be able to have critical thinking. Now, the solution is not just to close all information, because our mission is to organize the world's information, and I think there's a lot of good things with information. But the important thing is for us to have critical thinking since mulai dari kecil, so we can learn. Hey, jangan langsung percaya. Don't just always believe what you read. Don't give around your password to some strangers or give them just some basic stuff. Point being is that we're having a lot of this program we call Be Saver Internet, that we actually make it fun, make it more digestible instead of like boring lines of words that nobody reads, to actually start educating parents and educating teachers, and of course educating kids since they're small to how to use the internet safely. So to summarize, the hardware, the digital skilling itself, and then how to use the internet in a safe manner.
Ya, jadi udah dipersiapkan juga bahkan dari dini ya. Jadi Google nggak cuma menyasar anak-anak yang udah muda melek teknologi, bahkan anak kecil-kecil pun juga dianggap harusnya sudah melek teknologi. Thank you Pak Randi. Nah, ini pertanyaan balik lagi ke soal leader nih Pak Randi. Tadi ini dari Lukman, Pak Randi katanya untuk menjadi agile leader salah satunya menurut pengalaman Bapak tadi simpler is better ya Pak ya. Nah, Bapak apakah bisa dijelaskan lebih lanjut katanya Pak?
Simple is better, right? Yeah.
The one that you said before.
So this is probably just my personal experience. I used to work for McKinsey for 5 years. This is before Kimberly-Clark and before Textron, as I introduced earlier. And I worked at McKinsey for 5 years, about 1 year in Indonesia and about 4 years based in Atlanta, Georgia, in America, in the United States. Even though what I found, and in consulting, we have this, in the beginning, you start as what you call a generalist. Generalist means you can be put in any project. You can be put in a project in telecom. You can, helping telecom company. I used to work with one of the big telco company in the US as my first project when I transferred to the US from Indonesia. Before, when I was in Indonesia, I worked with a big manufacturing company. My point is that one thing that I learned about McKinsey is that there's a lot of jokes sometimes about consultant and here whatnot. I'm used to that. But one thing that I would really give a lot of credits to in the consulting world is that they actually give a strong training and culture for you to be able to simplify complicated messages and keep it at a high level and be able to communicate it in a logical manner. I believe there is a critical skill that a leader needs to have, especially as you become more senior. Because I believe Pak Fikram, Pak Ahmad, all of us, they are faced with all sort of stuff, right? Ranging from regulatory, technology, customer, B2B, B2C. It's very complicated. If you're unable to kind of communicate that in a simple manner and give direction and guidance to the team in a very simple manner, it's difficult to get things executed. So I really believe that that is an important part of a leader, is to help the team to simplify, to make it clear that the various, make sense out of the complicated world into chunks of specific things that the team can push forward. That is just my personal belief. Yeah.
Ya, kayak dulu ada pertanyaan, how do you eat an elephant, gitu ya Pak ya? You don't eat an elephant as big as that, but you chop them into bite size, mungkin gitu ya. What it means by simpler is better menurut pengalaman Pak Randy tadi. Ini masih pertanyaan tentang agile leader lagi nih Pak. Katanya it's good ini menurut Pak Sahat Silalahi. It's good sih to be agile gitu ya, soalnya kemarin. But how can we keep our focus on private specific goal? Jadi mungkin maksudnya kita juga punya private life, kita juga punya professional life. Nah, what you talk about being agile leader usually is in the professional life. And how do we keep our focus on private specific goal? Mungkin ada pengalaman Pak Randy juga?
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously, I cannot comment on. Everybody has their own situation with regards to private life. I guess what I would say, and from my own personal experience, to be honest, it is. I think it is. It will be something good. It is something good if you can have a clear understanding and alignment on people who are important in your private life as you embark on your professional life. Let me give you an example. So when I moved, I mentioned I moved with McKinsey from Indonesia to Atlanta. At that time, I got married, and my wife is originally from Thailand. She was a vice president in a big bank in Thailand. But we decided to get married, and I was in Indonesia. So since when you get married, you kind of want to live together, right? so we got married, and then so we want to move to the US. My point is that once I moved to the US, and then as I see some of the potential career option that I could pursue, in order to grow as a leader, one option that I'm interested to pursue is to move around to different places to learn different culture, different experience. But to do that, I'm not moving by myself because I want to stay married happily. So I want my wife to come to get it. But so we have that very frank conversation, and she's very okay. It's like, okay, I'm willing. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not encouraging people, okay, only one person work. And absolutely not. That's not my message. My message is that, but having that conversation up front and having clarity is like, okay, I'm good with this kind of path of us as a family. But for me personally, just make sure you earn enough so I don't have to eat, bakmi noodle instant every day. Like, just make sure you kind of have enough. Then, and I also look forward to have kind of like a life that we try different culture. Again, I'm not saying this to say that is the best way. My only experience that I probably can share is that sometimes if you can get alignment between your private and your other part important people in your family, and coincide that with what you want to do with your professional life, that could make things a bit more easier, perhaps. It's just my 2 cents. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Pak. And again,
for the record, I like to eat instant noodle. Yeah, I eat that all the time. But tapi mungkin nggak tiap hari ya.
Yeah, that's true. And then again, everyone has their own different lives ya Pak ya. So apa yang mungkin baik untuk satu orang belum tentu baik juga untuk yang lain, belum tentu cocok untuk yang lain gitu. Baik tapi belum tentu cocok gitu ya Pak ya. Thanks Pak for sharing that. Nah ini ada pertanyaan kepo nih Pak nih sebenarnya dari Mirza Afandi. Apakah benar Google udah menerapkan ini work from home selamanya? Kalau kita baca-baca gitu ya, katanya Google sudah menerapkan work from home selamanya. Apakah benar dan apa challenge dan key success factor-nya selama menerapkan work from home? Apalagi kalau selamanya gitu ya, di company-company lain kan hanya selama this COVID period gitu. Mulai sekarang tuh udah mulai gradually masuk ke kantor lagi. Nah gimana dengan Google Pak?
Yeah, so no, I think that's a very good question. So basically what happened is this, obviously during COVID time, during the worst time, almost every company work from home. Nah sekarang yang kita terapkan for Google, first and foremost, different office will be different depending on the situation of the country. As we know, every country is different at the different part of their journey. So that's our first principle, is that we only start opening up when we start seeing things getting better in the country, of course, for obvious reasons. And I think that is applicable everywhere. Now, whether it's permanent or not, I think there's a couple of things that I think there's some misinterpretation. First, because of this experience of what we've been having during COVID, we realize there might be some roles that can be done fully remote, some roles, some specific roles. So what we did is that we actually have a process where we allow some of the Googlers who can apply that for my role, can I fully do this job remotely? For example, I don't know, if the team based in California, probably this one person wants to work from Colorado or whatever. But we have a process where it will be evaluated. What I will say though, it is not for every role, because some roles really needs to be in the market, right? For example, if you're a salesperson, how can you not be in the market where the customers are? That makes no sense. So so majority of the roles, we still, not fully remote. That said, what we have done, we work 5 days a week, right? So what we are trying to explore is that we're going to move towards 3 days a week mandatory working from office, and 2 days optional if you want to work from home for everybody. So, and that is only once the office is open. And this thing is still always an experiment. So what we got, and that's what basically what we are trying to do. So we pick a date out of Senin sampai Jumat. Yeah. Doesn't mean you only work for 3 days. I want to clarify. Yeah? You work for 5 days. It's just 2 days you can work from home. But one last thing before I return it, I want to emphasize though, as Google, the reason why we don't fully work from home completely, except for select specific roles that I mentioned earlier, is that we really believe the power of Google and the power of innovation comes oftentimes from the day-to-day interaction, human interaction. We don't think that can be just replaced completely to be 100%. So therefore, we still believe it's still, but on the other hand, we also believe you might not need the 5 days anymore. So therefore, we come up with this hybrid approach. But I want to emphasize, for us as an innovative company, there is a lot of value on people being together physically, face-to-face, talking to you. Therefore, we still think at least 3 days, we want to ensure that people work from the office. Yeah.
Right. This is arrangement for Google Indonesia, Pak, or worldwide?
Worldwide.
Oh, this is worldwide already. All right, I see. Okay, thank you Pak. Ini masih banyak nih pertanyaan keeps coming nih Pak. Masih punya banyak waktu ya Pak Randy, mudah-mudahan ya. Right.
Okay, no problem.
Ini sekarang kita balik ke soal leader lagi nih. Ini maaf ya, karena ini pertanyaan dari netizen, jadi kesana kemari ya. Oke, ini pertanyaannya, sebagai seorang leader, apabila antara target dan kondisi actual tidak sesuai, apa yang harus dilakukan nih oleh seorang leader, Pak?
Target ya, ya. I think it's important to, number one, always remind the troops and the team on the vision and the long-term strategy. I think that is always important to keep on repeating it. One thing that I learned, as not just from my consulting days, even as I become a general manager in many different countries, you can never be too repetitive untuk mengulang-ulang lagi ini adalah misi kita. Even internally. Mungkin until you as the leader yourself feeling a bit bored, like, aduh, bosen nih kayaknya orang udah tahu, tapi you'll be surprised how often you have to repeat the vision, mission, and what a company in the strategy long run to your team all the time. So that's, now with regards to the target in the short term, I mean, every company in the end of the day, whether you're Google, you're Indosat Ooredoo, Tri, or anybody, we have, as a company, we need to achieve our expectation on revenue and on whatever target you have in different team, engineering and whatnot, right? So on that, what we learn is that there were, especially pada masa COVID seperti ini ya, especially during this COVID time, it's difficult to set the perfect target or the right target because you have a lot of uncontrollable situation that can hit you, PPKM and all this kind of thing. What we learn is that acknowledge it when there's external challenges. Yeah, you might get impacted a bit in terms of short-term bonus, whatever in the short term, but as long as you are clear on the long term and the team is doing the right thing, they're striving, that's, it's a give and take. I repeat, a give and take. I think for the employees, you have to understand sometimes a company has certain expectation by stakeholders and whatnot. Yeah. But the other hand, the company and the leaders have to also understand, it impacts people on a personal basis. So you have to kind of give and take a little bit, but keep your eyes in terms of the long run. Focus on doing the right thing that is helpful in the long run. In the short term, sometimes you might miss target, but give and take, right? Sometimes when times are good, you also can overachieve with some good tailwind from the market. So it's a bit of give and take, I would say. I mean, I'll just give one short example. For us in Google during the middle of the worst time of the crisis, in addition to like looking at the target, we put an OKR where we want the team to focus on sharing insights for our partners and clients. So for example, you know, we know that some clients during very difficult time is probably not going to spend as much with regard to certain type of advertising, right? But we know that they really value the insights that Google can provide. So we make it into the key objective for the team to share insights and relevant insights for a client, because we know that is valuable for the long term, it's valuable for our partners, and you know, it's doing the right thing for the long run. So I think mix and match.
I see, alright. Thank you very much Pak for the explanation. Ini barusan ada pertanyaan yang bagus sebetulnya di prompter saya tapi hilang. Boleh tolong dibalikin lagi? Oke. Nah, nih Pak, pertanyaan lagi, balik lagi nih soal being leader ya Pak ya. Dari Joko Anggoro, Pak Randy sharing-sharing Pak katanya, apakah pernah mengalami pengalaman di saat low level dan bagaimana untuk kembali ke high levelnya Pak? Nih kayaknya minta pengalaman pribadi lagi nih Pak. Karena kita biasanya justru belajar dari other people's experiences ya Pak ya.
Ya, maksudnya low level, you mean like when I'm down, like when challenging.
Mungkin ada suatu kejadian yang membuat you are in the lowest level, whether usually this is professional ya Pak ya. Terus gimana go back up, bounce back-nya lagi itu bagaimana?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that. That happens to everybody. And just to be clear, we are all human beings. The low level or the challenge that we have is we cannot separate between professional and personal, right? If something happened to you personally that makes you feel down, that will impact you as well. It's not always easy to separate out. But to answer the question specifically on the professional basis, I would say I'll tie it back with you know, I think a lot of us, it depends. Sometimes what does it mean? Sometimes in the professionally, it impacts you because you might not get the promotion that you want, right? You might not get this. Yeah, you might not get the promotion. You might get like a bad performance review or whatever. There's different kind of, you might not get the job that you want. Those are some of the examples. Yeah. So for me personally, I would say if I look back at my career, absolutely, those are some of the examples. For example, you know, as I do my career, there might be roles that I wanted to get, but I did not get it. Yeah. So the way to think about it is, I'm sure everybody, apalagi yang HR ya, we will know about this curve, right? Every time you hear something, not every time, a lot of time when you hear something that is not good, you go through the phase of not happy, denying, nggak terima, starting to accept, after a while, then go over the hump. I think regardless of the situation, everybody will have this curve. So in my opinion, the important thing is that when this thing happens, don't make rash decision or say things or react to query when you are in the first couple of weeks or days when you are in the low level. Because that's when sometimes you can make things because of short-term stuff. You go through that and then after that, frankly, assess. Is this something that I don't get, right? In this case, I might not get the roles that I want. Is that something that, okay, makes you really want to, okay, hand in your resignation or change job or something? Or is it something that, hey, there might be something good in terms of the feedback that I receive why I did not get the job, or it might be logical. Probably I need to work on that, and then you know, and then I might be coming out come out better out of that. So that will be kind of like the way I think about it. And in terms of my personal experience, you know, I won't go into too much detail, but I would say basically, I've had those kind of experience just like everybody else. But what I learned is that during the first couple of weeks or even 2-3 months, you can feel very miserable. My only thing is that don't make too rash decision. You'll be surprised actually how many other great opportunities that await you, as long as you are doing things for the long run and for the right thing. Would be my personal experience. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Thank you Pak. Karena setiap orang pasti ada lah turunnya, ada lah naiknya gitu ya Pak ya. Dan again, setiap orang pasti akan berbeda-beda bagaimana cara bounce back-nya ya Pak ya. What works with one person may not necessarily work for other person juga gitu ya. Thank you Pak Randy for the sharing. Ini tadi juga ada suatu pertanyaan di awal tadi nih yang hilang. Yang di awal kalau nggak salah dari Muhammad Agus Hotang tadi ya. Pertanyaan tentang, ya thank you. Nah ini Pak, dari Muhammad Agus Hotang. Katanya, as the industry is expanding, and at some points Google and telcos business seem to be converging. Kita udah lihat ya harusnya ya. Ada telcos voice revenue is reducing at steady rate due to data center movement to clouds dan sebagainya. Nah, how do you see Google and telco work hand in hand, complementing each other to grow together instead of eliminating or jadi zero sum game? Gimana nih Pak?
So absolutely, we don't want it. There should not be, and I don't believe it's a zero sum game. And I think this question is as much to Pak Fikram and Pak Ahmad and everybody else. Is that there is so much complement. Yes, of course, there's some, like everything else, because of the size and the scope of what Google does. There's always things that overlap. But we really believe the opportunity to synergize and to help each other out far, far outweigh the kind of overlapping. I mean, you can talk about giving many examples. The obvious one, obviously, is cloud. Yeah, cloud. We have, I mentioned we've been using machine learning for 20 over years. We have investment in thinking of what's going to happen in the next decade and plus on quantum computing. Those are a wide range of technology and whatnot that we get through our platform that scales across billions of people all over the world. So there's a lot of technology learning that we have from there. But telco companies, I think, absolutely have a lot of strength in terms of what's happening in the country. There's a lot of opportunity what we can do where we can leverage both of them as an example, just to give cloud. On the other platform side, Google has the reach of YouTube users already more than 100 millions. There's a lot of reach that we have with regards to reaching different touch point on users in Indonesia, for example. And telco like Indosat Ooredoo 3 also have a lot of reach. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to work together to get, and then we have a lot of example from different countries and different telcos as well, where it's synergistic on both sides. So I think the opportunity is actually limitless with regards to the win-win solution that we can do together between Google overall, including cloud, as well as the telco companies, yeah, which are very important partners to us. Yeah.
Right, di opportunity-nya pasti banyak banget ya, apalagi udah sekarang nih kita semuanya ke arah digital gitu. Thank you Pak, masih keep coming nih Pak pertanyaan-pertanyaannya. Nah ini ada Mbak Rina nanya, kan kita udah sering dengar ya, Agile leader, Agile ini, Agile itu gitu ya. Tapi pertanyaan dia nih lucu juga nih, unik lah maksudnya, bukan lucu, menarik. How to make sure you can implement the Agile things, yeah? If you only good at the theory, you heard it from other people, you read it somewhere gitu ya, you know the theory, but you don't have the experience, and still you want to enhance your own opinion. Gimana tuh Pak?
Yeah, that's a great question, which is which I come back to the point about. I think I have several thoughts or tips. Number one that I suggest is to jangan ikut-ikutan. Jangan ikut-ikutan just because you feel like this is the trending thing that you heard a lot about. That's why you want to do it.
Kata-katanya seksi gitu ya kesannya ya. Jadi pengen dipakai.
Because there's always something new, right? Okay, I don't know. I mean, now what is it? What do you hear now? You hear, I'm sure, a lot about cryptocurrency. You hear about multiverse. There's a lot of kind of always something new and different. I'm not against that, just to be clear, nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that you hear always like new trends and stuff coming up because that's life. But what's importantly, it's good to be aware of all that. But then as you understand different things, then look back at yourself. What is it that you are good at? And Anda sendiri jagonya kerjaan apa? And what is it that you're passionate about? Anda sendiri passionate-nya sekalian ini nggak? Are you trying to, for example, I don't know, learning cryptocurrency or something just because you read it somewhere all the time? Wow, looks like everybody's becoming millionaire, akhirnya mau ikut-ikutan. Or you really are passionate about like understanding that? I think it's extremely important. So understanding the trend is number one, is important, but don't just like follow up the theory jargon. You actually, is it something that you think you can be good at and you're willing to learn about that? So I come back to my point about learning agility. And is this something you're passionate about? I think if it's the right trend, you're passionate about it and you are good at it and you're willing to learn, I think you can make the transition. Yang bahayanya tuh just like everybody ikut-ikutan aja. To me that is actually the issue. If you just trying to follow yang lagi ngetren aja without necessarily that being your passion, would be my thought.
Ya. Jadi kata kuncinya sebetulnya look into yourself juga ya Pak ya. Jangan ikut-ikutan aja. Search within yourself. Is that really your passion? Be authentic lah gitu ya Pak ya. Intinya mungkin.
Combine both. Yeah, just because you read in some article, wow, a lot of people becoming millionaire because of this. Doesn't necessarily mean that you just follow that, you know. Just nothing wrong. If you can do it, good for you. But just look into yourself as well. Yeah.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Pak. Ini sekarang ada lagi dari Bu Fuli. Looking at Google from different angle, Google merubah dunia katanya. Nah, bagaimana Google mengontrol dan menyikapi efek sosial yang terjadi, baik secara positif maupun negatif? Nah, itu pertanyaan pertama. Ini ada 2 pertanyaan nih kayaknya nih. Satu lagi katanya, perubahan digital mindset ini kan sedang berlangsung nih di masyarakat gitu ya. Banyak nih kontribusi Google di sini. Lantas bagaimana Google melihat hal ini? Is it good? Is it as expected? Or even faster due to COVID? Nah kalau emang this is good, atau ini kok faster gitu ya, gara-gara ada COVID ini dari yang kita expect sebelumnya. How do you catch up?
Okay. So I guess the first one first, right? I think positive and negative. So as I mentioned, I mean, we'd like to think, I always like to use my own personal experience. There are Google digitalization, there's more, net, they're more positive than negative. So to me, I think the way we see internet today, or digitalization, is kind of, to use a very basic example, like fire, api. Api di berapa ratus tahun lalu, many hundred years ago. Yeah. You can use fire to burn people, which is not good, right? And you can use it to warm things. So basically, it's a tool, it's something that can be good or bad. That is what internet is all about. We believe there's a lot more positive because, as I mentioned, even if I use some example, I was using earlier an example of, you know, when I grew up, not so many people can buy Encyclopedia Britannica to get the information. Versus now, anybody can reach the information with just simply using Google search. We have YouTube creators right now, YouTuber that make, in fact, there's one article I read that satu kampung semuanya can make a lot of money. And you can be a YouTube creator sitting in a small town and make money if you create content that are relevant for folks. My point, digital can actually, not just Google, just to be clear, even, you know, Tokopedia's principle is to democratize commerce, right? Gojek. So I think, so point being is that digital can use to unlock so many things, a seller things that use a challenge. That is a lot of the positive. The negative, as I mentioned, as a tool, if it's not used properly, and if it can be used, people can, you know, you might get information spread, you know, and hacking and all the bad stuff that you read, right? Which is why it's important for us to not only on the technical side, you know, make sure that everything is secure and everything else, but also on the education. I just cannot overemphasize the importance of education. Saya ingin terus meningkatkan edukasi. Because in my opinion, you can have the most secure house, the secure bank. Kalau passwordnya dikasih orang kan, what does it matter? I mean, like, you know, if you have the most secure house, if you give the key to somebody else because somebody was able to persuade you to give the key, then it doesn't matter. So my point is that as the negative part is there, so for us it's important to make sure we address it through education as well as not just on the technical side. I think that's extremely important. Yeah.
Right, very interesting, Pak. Nah, ini next question ini you may want to speak full English, Pak, karena yang nanya adalah seorang expat nih, Pak Tafabalan, ya. Jadi kan ada dikotomi nih sekarang antara hiring and grooming from within, gitu ya. Nah, pertanyaannya Pak Tafabalan adalah, what works best in your experience? Hiring talent and grooming them within to become future leaders while preserving the culture, or hiring experienced talent from out there to introduce new ideas and drive change? Which one nih Pak, according to your experience Pak?
According to my experience, it's not just one, it's always both. It's always both. Now, just to be clear, we always want to, I think any company would want to make sure they groom their talent. So the way to think about it, I think for me, is that you always want to make sure you groom your talent and you promote them, and that is always like the core part of it. But life doesn't work like that, right? Sometimes as you grow into different field, sometimes, people have turnovers and whatnot, you might have to fill in the talent with somebody from the outside. So number one, I don't think it's either or. And as managers, as leader or hiring manager, I think it is always that qualitative decision that you make if you have a position, and you have a candidate, an internal who might be 80% who you think ready for that job, but culturally already know what the company is all about, versus you get somebody from the outside who might not know the company's culture, but proven to have the relevant skills that are relevant for them or have done their job elsewhere. This is one of those, I believe there's a lot of HR people here. The answer is not always one way or the other, right? You have to see case by case based on the person, based on the need, based on the team and everything else. But I personally, and from my experience from different companies, I don't think a company should be too fixated on one way or the other. You should always be open for both. The only thing that I would probably emphasize, the important part when hiring somebody from the outside, you don't need to have somebody who's like a robot and just assimilate to 100% of the culture. You want to have somebody who bring in the diversity of thinking, challenging the team. But there are certain level of kind of culture, norm, expectation that the company has, that you want to ensure that the person has that agility to fit in the culture. But you don't want to make sure, you don't want to like a yes women or yes man, right? As always, you want to make sure the person is able to challenge, especially in the leadership position, but also tick certain box with regards to, have the same values, same mindset as the overall leadership of the company. I think that's critical.
Right. So there's always two sides of a coin, Pak ya. Jadi tergantung, depends on the situation, the needs. Yeah, you can't choose one over another, especially on this case. Right, thank you Pak Randy. Nah, this is asking again about your experience Pak from Feriza. Based on your international work experience, what's local value, which is Indonesian values, that can be applied to leverage when competing with foreign worker?
With foreign worker in the country, right? Yeah, okay.
You have international work experience everywhere, and you are Indonesian. So what's local values that you think can be applied to leverage when you're competing with other workers?
Sure. So yes, as an Indonesian, I work in all these countries, right? Singapore, Canada, in Hong Kong, Taiwan, everywhere, US. So I think the locals inherently have an advantage compared to the foreigner because they're locals, right? The culture, how there's already a strong inherent, udah ada basicnya tuh ya, local have all those advantage. I think that's by default you have that kind of advantage. I think that is, first of all, I don't know if I really, I don't know if I agree with the terms competing with the foreign employee, foreign workers. I don't think that is the right mindset in my personal opinion. I think if you have the right people, it's always complementary. If the mindset is that, oh, I'm local, you're foreign, and then foreign, I don't think you want to grow that way. As a company, you need, as we established earlier, you want to grow and you want to get the benefit of like diversity of thinking and approach. Typically somebody, if it's, even like legally, it's from the permit, it's always easier to hire local, right? But there's always a reason sometimes when you want to bring somebody that's local because of expertise, diversity of experience, whatever that you bring in. So I think the mindset should be, if I'm local and whatnot, is you want to learn as much as you can from folks who might not be from the country. And on the other hand, make sure you kind of leverage the strength that you have, the capability by knowing the culture to kind of get the best and then grow yourself. So I think that is the better way to think about it versus like competing. I don't see it as a competition. And from my personal experience, that's kind of like how I approach it, frankly, when I work in all these different countries. Now, I think it's important from the person who's not local to have deep sense of respect and at least showing willingness and wantingness to respect the culture and wanting to, you know, you don't have, it's difficult to learn. I guarantee you, I don't speak all the language in all the places that I go to, but, you know, just showing that you want to understand the culture, respect, always appreciated by the locals. That's number one. You have to do that, in my opinion. Doesn't mean you have to learn our language to showing that. But on the other hand, you have to kind of also, you know, there is something expected when you bring something, a fresh point of view. That is that you can also grow if the locals can grow if somebody is, you know, not being constrained by too much of kind of like, this is how we always do things. I think I actually see it as a net positive to have a workforce that is diverse and also in all sort of, not just gender, race, and everything else, but also from the perspective of locals as well as outsiders. I really believe in that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing your experiences juga, Pak. Ini nggak terasa waktu kita udah mau habis, tapi masih banyak banget sebetulnya pertanyaannya nih, Pak. So mohon maaf ya teman-teman yang pertanyaannya belum sempat ditanyakan ke Pak Randy. Mudah-mudahan nanti lain kali ada kesempatan lain. Tapi mudah-mudahan tadi beberapa jawaban dari Pak Randy terhadap pertanyaan-pertanyaan teman-teman yang lain itu udah cukup agak-agak menjawab juga lah pertanyaan yang belum sempat ditanyakan ya. So nanti abis ini sebetulnya Pak Randy bisa memilih satu pertanyaan yang terbaik nih dari beberapa pertanyaan yang udah diberikan. Tapi kan banyak banget ya Pak ya pertanyaannya. Mungkin Pak Randy juga udah lupa yang mana aja gitu ya. Oke, nanti deh panitia akan menghubungi lebih lanjut ya mengenai pemenang dari Best Question beserta hadiahnya ya. Nah, sahabat, seru sekali nih sesi webinar kita kali ini. Kita diskusi banyak dengan Pak Randy Jusuf dan berbagi ilmu dan pengalaman yang sangat bermanfaat untuk kita semua. Terima kasih banyak Pak Randy sebelumnya ya untuk semua sharing-sharing pengalamannya juga sharing-sharing ilmunya dengan kita semua di sini. Nah, kami juga berterima kasih untuk kehadiran sahabat Indosat Uridu dan Satria yang telah berpartisipasi memeriahkan webinar ini. Dan jangan lupa ya, ikut challenge kita, Journey Towards the New Chapter, dan di sebentar lagi nih akan ada webinar selanjutnya, Impact, Improving Works Through Competition with Your Team. Bersama Pak Rifki Rizal Derian, ya nanti jam 11.30 sampai jam 12.20. Untuk mengikuti webinar selanjutnya, teman-teman silakan kembali ke conference room dan klik join di webinar selanjutnya ya. Terima kasih sekali lagi, terima kasih Pak Randy, terima kasih sahabat Indosat Uridu dan para Satria semua. Sampai jumpa, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih semuanya, sampai jumpa.